June 2025. The world of talent television is about to change forever. Something terrible happened that nobody saw coming. It started with Kodi, a name that once brought inspiration to millions, now linked to a heartbreaking twist. Behind the cameras, a car accident has shaken the AGT family to its core. Insiders say Simon was devastated, and what he said during a closed-door moment left crew members in tears. July 7th, 1996. Temecula, California. A baby boy cries for the first time. His name is Kodi, but something is different. The doctors notice it right away. His eyes don't follow the light. They don't track movement like they should. Tests are run. Machines hum and beep. Then comes the diagnosis that will change everything. Optic nerve hypoplasia. At just 3 months old, Kodi is declared legally blind. The world he was born into is one he will never fully see. His parents hold him close, hearts heavy with fear. What kind of life will he have? How will he navigate a world built for sight? But in that small hospital room, no one knew. No one could predict the gift hiding inside this fragile little boy. Tina Lee, Kodi's mother, refused to let fear win. She watched her son closely, searching for signs of who he might become. And then she noticed something unusual. Whenever music played, Kodi stopped crying. His tiny body would relax. His face would soften. It was like the melodies reached him in a way words never could. She would hum to him for hours, her voice wrapping around him like a blanket. The television would play old soul songs, and Kodi would go still, listening. Sound became his comfort. Music became his language. But life wasn't going to be easy. As Kodi grew, new challenges emerged. At 18 months, doctors delivered another heartbreaking diagnosis: autism. Kodi struggled to speak. He couldn't express what he felt or needed. Social interactions confused him. Eye contact was painful. The world was loud, chaotic, overwhelming. For a child who was both blind and autistic, every day felt like a battle. Simple things like going to the store or meeting new people became sources of intense stress. Tina watched her son suffer in silence, trapped inside a mind and body that didn't work the way others did. She cried often, wondering if he would ever find peace, but she never stopped searching for a way to reach him. Then one afternoon, everything shifted. Tina was playing piano in their living room, just a few simple chords, nothing fancy. Kodi, who was sitting nearby, suddenly turned his head toward the sound. He crawled over to the bench. His small hands reached up, touching the keys, and then, without any lesson or instruction, he pressed a note, then another, and another. The melody he created wasn't random. It was intentional, musical, beautiful. Tina froze, her breath caught in her throat. Her son, who couldn't tell her he was hungry or scared, was speaking through music. She played a short tune. Kodi listened once, then he played it back perfectly, note for note, tone for tone. In that moment, Tina knew. This was his voice. Raising Kodi was like learning a new language every single day. Tina had no manual, no guide, no expert to call when things got hard. She had to figure it out herself, and things got hard often. Kodi would have meltdowns that lasted for hours. He'd scream, rock back and forth, unable to calm down. The world was too bright, too loud, too much. Tina learned to dim the lights, lower her voice, and play soft music until he could breathe again. She became his translator, his shield, his anchor. When doctors said he might never speak in full sentences, she taught him anyway. When specialists said he'd struggle to live independently, she refused to accept it. Tina wasn't just a mother. She was a warrior fighting for her son's future. But being a warrior doesn't mean you don't break. Tina had her own moments of doubt, her own nights of tears. She watched other kids Kodi's age run and play, talk and laugh, while her son sat alone, lost in his own world. She wondered if she was doing enough, if she was making the right choices. The financial strain was real too. Therapy wasn't cheap. Special programs cost money they didn't always have. There were days when Tina felt like she was drowning, trying to keep everyone afloat. Her marriage was tested. Her other children needed her too. The weight of it all was crushing, but every time she thought about giving up, she'd hear Kodi play the piano, and that sound reminded her why she kept fighting. Kodi Lee didn't speak much, but when he sat at a piano, he said everything. His fingers moved across the keys like they were dancing with an invisible partner. Each note was deliberate, intentional, full of meaning. People who heard him play often said the same thing. It's like he's telling a story. And he was. Every song was a piece of his soul laid bare for the world to hear. When he played upbeat melodies, you could feel his joy. When he played slow, haunting chords, you could feel his loneliness. Music became the bridge between Kodi's silent world and ours. It was the one place where he didn't need to explain himself. He just needed to play, and we just needed to listen. But living with such a gift came with its own kind of pain. Kodi understood the world in ways most people never would. He felt emotions deeply, intensely, sometimes too much. A sad song could send him into tears. A happy melody could make him laugh uncontrollably. He had no filter, no walls to protect himself from the weight of what he felt. And because he couldn't always express those feelings in words, they stayed trapped inside him. Music was his only release. It was the one place where he could let everything out without fear of being misunderstood. But even that wasn't always enough. Sometimes the emotions were too big, too overwhelming, and all Kodi could do was sit in silence, waiting for the storm inside him to pass. Socially, Kodi struggled more than most people realized. He couldn't read facial expressions. He didn't understand sarcasm or jokes. Conversations felt like puzzles he could never solve. Other kids didn't know how to talk to him, so they didn't. He spent most of his childhood alone, watching from the sidelines as life happened around him. Birthday parties, school events, friendships. All of it felt distant, unreachable. He wanted to connect, but he didn't know how, and the world didn't seem interested in learning his language, except through music. When Kodi played at school assemblies or talent shows, people finally paid attention. They clapped, they cheered. For a few minutes, he wasn't the weird kid. He was the talented one, and that felt like oxygen. Growing up disabled in a world that wasn't built for you is exhausting. Kodi knew that better than anyone. Simple things other kids took for granted felt impossible for him. Walking through a crowded hallway at school, ordering food at a restaurant, making a friend. Every day was filled with tiny battles no one else could see, and the bullying made it worse. Kids mocked the way he rocked back and forth. They laughed when he covered his ears at loud noises. Some even imitated his speech, thinking it was funny. Kodi couldn't fight back with words. He couldn't defend himself the way others could, so he held it all inside, letting the hurt pile up until it felt like he might collapse under the weight of it. Tina saw the pain in her son, and it broke her heart. She reported the bullying to teachers, but not much changed. Schools weren't equipped to handle kids like Kodi. He didn't fit into any box. He wasn't severe enough for special education, but struggled too much in regular classes. So he fell through the cracks, spending most of his school years feeling invisible. Tina homeschooled him eventually, pulling him out of an environment that was crushing his spirit. At home, Kodi could breathe again. He could be himself without judgment, but even there, the damage had been done. He had learned early on that the world wasn't kind to people who were different, and that lesson stayed with him, shaping how he saw himself for years. Medical appointments became a regular part of life. Eye exams, neurological tests, therapy sessions. Kodi was poked, prodded, and analyzed constantly. Doctors meant well, but to Kodi, it all felt invasive. He hated the sterile smell of hospitals. He hated the bright fluorescent lights. He hated being treated like a science experiment instead of a person. Each appointment reminded him of everything he couldn't do, everything that was wrong with him. And while his family tried to stay positive, Kodi couldn't help but internalize the message that he was broken, that he needed fixing. It's hard to love yourself when the world keeps telling you you're not enough. And for a long time, Kodi believed he wasn't. But Tina refused to let her son give up on himself. She filled their home with reminders of his worth, photos of him playing piano, certificates from performances, letters from people his music had touched. She told him every single day that he was special, that he mattered, that his voice needed to be heard. And slowly, Kodi started to believe her. The piano became his proof. When he played, he wasn't broken. He was powerful. He wasn't limited. He was limitless. Music gave him a reason to keep going, even when everything else felt too hard. It reminded him that he had something the world needed, something beautiful, something worth fighting for. And that belief, fragile as it was, kept him alive during the darkest times. The day Kodi walked onto the America's Got Talent stage felt surreal. Bright lights, thousands of people in the audience, cameras everywhere. For someone with sensory sensitivities, it was a nightmare. But Tina was right there beside him, holding his hand, guiding him step by step. The judges sat in front of them: Simon Cowell, Howie Mandel, Julianne Hough, Gabrielle Union. They watched curiously as Tina helped Kodi to the microphone. He looked so small standing there, nervous and fragile. Tina introduced him, her voice shaking with emotion. She told them about his blindness, his autism, his incredible gift. The audience listened, but you could feel the skepticism in the room. They'd seen inspirational stories before. They didn't know this one would be different. Then Kodi sat down at the piano. The room went silent. His hands hovered over the keys for just a moment, and then he began to play. The opening notes of A Song for You by Donny Hathaway filled the theater. Soft, gentle, beautiful. And then Kodi started to sing. His voice, rich and soulful, poured out like honey. Every word carried weight. Every note hit perfectly. The audience sat frozen, afraid to move, afraid to break the spell. On stage, Kodi was no longer the shy, nervous boy who'd walked out moments before. He was a musician, an artist, a force of nature. His fingers danced across the keys with impossible precision. His voice soared and dipped, bending notes in ways that made your heart ache. This wasn't just a performance, it was magic. In the judges' booth, something extraordinary was happening. Simon Cowell, known for his harsh critiques, sat with his mouth open, stunned. Howie leaned forward, completely transfixed. Julianne had tears streaming down her face, and Gabrielle Union, who'd been a judge for only one season, knew she was witnessing something historic. Her hand hovered over the golden buzzer, the button that would send Kodi straight to the live shows. She looked at the other judges, then back at Kodi, who was still lost in his music, unaware of the impact he was having. And then, without hesitation, Gabrielle slammed her hand down. Golden confetti exploded from the ceiling. The audience erupted in screams and applause. Kodi had done it. He'd blown everyone away. Tina collapsed into sobs, covering her face with her hands. Years of struggle, doubt, and pain came pouring out all at once. Her son, the boy the world had tried to limit, was standing on one of the biggest stages in America being celebrated. Gabrielle ran onto the stage and hugged Kodi tightly, tears in her own eyes. "You're amazing," she told him. Kodi, overwhelmed by the noise and emotion, rocked back and forth, processing everything. He didn't fully understand what had just happened, but he could feel it. The love, the acceptance, the validation. For the first time in his life, the world wasn't just tolerating him, it was celebrating him. And that feeling, that moment, changed everything. Kodi Lee was no longer invisible, he was a star. The performance went viral overnight. Millions of people watched the clip online, sharing it across every social media platform. Comments poured in from all over the world. "I'm crying. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. He's a gift to this world." Kodi's story touched people in ways his family never expected. Parents of disabled children reached out, saying Kodi gave them hope. Musicians praised his raw talent. Strangers sent messages of love and support. Kodi became a symbol of possibility, proof that limitations are often just illusions. But while the world celebrated, Kodi's journey was just beginning. Winning America's Got Talent wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would test him in ways no one could predict. But for now, in this moment, Kodi Lee was exactly where he belonged, in the light. Winning the Golden Buzzer was just the beginning. Now came the hard part, competing week after week on live television. For most contestants, that meant rehearsals, interviews, and performances. But for Kodi, it meant navigating a sensory minefield. The backstage area was chaos, loud music, flashing lights, hundreds of people rushing around, producers shouting directions, cameras in his face. Every moment was overwhelming. Tina became his buffer, shielding him from as much as she could. She'd find quiet corners for him to rest. She'd play soft music in his headphones to block out the noise. She'd hold his hand through every panic attack, whispering that he was safe, that he could do this. But the truth was, fame was exhausting, and Kodi was barely holding on. Rehearsals were brutal. Kodi needed repetition and routine to feel comfortable, but the show's schedule was unpredictable. Song choices changed last minute. Stage setups shifted constantly. Directors gave notes he didn't understand, and the pressure to deliver a perfect performance every single week weighed on him. Kodi couldn't verbalize his stress the way others could. He couldn't say, "I'm tired," or "this is too much." Instead, his body spoke for him. He'd shut down, going completely nonverbal for hours. He'd rock back and forth violently, overwhelmed by everything. His family watched helplessly, knowing they couldn't protect him from this. If Kodi wanted to win, he had to endure, and endure he did, one painful week at a time. But despite the struggles, Kodi kept delivering. Week after week, he stepped onto that stage and left audiences speechless. He sang Leon Russell's "A Song for You." He performed Freddie Johnston's "Bad Reputation." He played Simon and Garfunkel's "Bridge Over Troubled Water." Each performance was more powerful than the last. People voted for him not out of pity, but because he was genuinely one of the best acts on the show. His talent transcended his disabilities. When Kodi sang, you forgot about his blindness, you forgot about his autism, you just heard the music, and it was breathtaking. The judges praised him every week. Simon called him extraordinary. Howie said he was inspirational. Gabrielle cried nearly every time he performed. Kodi was becoming a phenomenon. But behind the scenes, cracks were forming. The constant travel between California and Los Angeles was draining. Hotel rooms felt foreign and uncomfortable. Kodi struggled to sleep in unfamiliar beds. His eating routine was disrupted, which triggered his anxiety, and the emotional toll of performing such vulnerable songs week after week was breaking him down. Music had always been his safe space, but now it felt like work, like obligation. The joy was slipping away, replaced by stress and pressure. Tina noticed the change in her son. He smiled less. He played piano at home less. The light in his eyes was dimming. She wanted to pull him out, to protect him from burning out completely. But they'd come too far. The finale was within reach. They just had to survive a little longer. And then, the finale arrived. September 18th, 2019. Kodi Lee stood on that stage one last time, ready to give everything he had left. He performed "You Are the Reason" by Callum Scott, pouring every ounce of emotion into the song. His voice cracked with vulnerability. His hands trembled on the keys. This wasn't just a performance, it was a plea, a prayer, a desperate hope that all the pain had been worth it. When he finished, the audience rose to their feet, roaring with applause. The judges wiped tears from their eyes, and then came the moment that would change Kodi's life forever. Host Terry Crews opened the envelope. The winner of America's Got Talent 2019 is Kodi Lee. The crowd exploded. Confetti rained down. Tina screamed, collapsing into her son's arms. They'd done it. Against all odds, Kodi Lee had won. Winning America's Got Talent should have been the beginning of a fairy tale. And for a while, it was. Kodi performed at corporate events, charity galas, and concert halls. His calendar filled up fast. The prize money gave his family financial stability they'd never had before. Opportunities flooded in from all directions: record labels, booking agents, media interviews. Kodi Lee was officially a star, but fame is a double-edged sword. The same world that celebrated him also demanded more from him. more performances, more appearances, more energy he didn't have. The pressure didn't stop just because he'd won. If anything, it intensified. And Kodi, exhausted from months of competition, was running on empty. Something had to give, and tragically, it did. It happened on a quiet evening in early 2020. Kodi had just finished a small local performance. Nothing major. He was tired, but happy, eager to get home. His family loaded into their car, the same car that had taken them to countless rehearsals, auditions, and shows. It was familiar, safe. The drive home should have been routine, but life has a way of shattering routine in an instant. They were at a red light when another car ran the intersection at full speed. There was no time to react, no time to brace, just the deafening sound of metal crushing metal. The impact was violent. Glass shattered, airbags deployed. The car spun, slamming into the curb before coming to a stop. For a moment, everything was silent. Then came the screams. Emergency responders arrived within minutes. Paramedics checked everyone for injuries. Physically, they were mostly okay. Cuts and bruises, whiplash, minor fractures, nothing life-threatening. But for Kodi, the damage went far deeper than anything doctors could see. He sat in the back of the ambulance, rocking violently, hands clamped over his ears. The sound of the crash played on a loop in his mind. The screech of tires, the explosion of breaking glass, the crunch of metal folding in on itself. For someone whose entire world is built on sound, those noises were torture. They drilled into his brain, replaying over and over, impossible to escape. He couldn't speak, couldn't explain. He just rocked and rocked, trapped inside a nightmare no one else could see. The days following the accident were some of the darkest Kodi's family had ever experienced. He refused to leave his room. He wouldn't eat, he wouldn't play piano. The instrument that had always been his refuge now sat silent, gathering dust. Tina tried everything. She played his favorite songs. She spoke softly, reassuringly. She held him when he'd let her, but nothing worked. Kodi had retreated into himself, shutting out the world completely. Therapists were called in. They diagnosed him with post-traumatic stress disorder, a common response to trauma. But knowing the diagnosis didn't make it easier. Kodi was lost, drowning in fear and anxiety, and his family didn't know how to pull him out. They could only wait, hope, and pray that time would heal what had been broken. Weeks turned into months. Kodi remained withdrawn, a shadow of the vibrant performer he'd been just months before. Scheduled performances were canceled. Interviews were declined. The world that had celebrated him so loudly went quiet, moving on to the next story, the next star. And in the silence, Kodi sat alone, haunted by sounds only he could hear. His family wondered if they'd ever get him back, if the music that had defined his life was gone forever. But deep inside Kodi, beneath the trauma and fear, something still flickered. A tiny ember of the boy who'd once found his voice through a piano. It was small, fragile, barely alive, but it was there. And slowly, painfully, that ember would begin to glow again. Healing doesn't happen overnight. It's slow, messy, and filled with setbacks. For Kodi, the road back to himself felt impossible. Weeks passed where he wouldn't even look at the piano. The instrument that had once been his lifeline now felt like a stranger. But Tina never stopped believing. She knew music had saved her son before, and she believed it could save him again. So she started small. One day, she sat at the piano and played a simple melody. Nothing dramatic, just a few soft notes. Kodi was in the other room, but she knew he could hear. She didn't ask him to join. She didn't pressure. She just played. And when she finished, she walked away. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Days later, Tina played again. This time, Kodi wandered closer. He didn't sit down. He didn't touch the keys. He just stood nearby, listening. Tina's heart raced, but she kept her face calm. She played another song, then another, and then she stopped, leaving the bench empty, an invitation without words. Kodi stared at the piano for a long time. His hands twitched at his sides. The pull was there, faint but real. Finally, slowly, he stepped forward. His fingers hovered over the keys, trembling, and then, so quietly you could barely hear it, he pressed a single note. Just one, but that one note was everything. It was the first sound he'd made in months. The first sign that maybe, just maybe, he was coming back. From that moment, progress came in tiny increments. Kodi would play a note or two, then stop. The next day, maybe a chord, then a short melody. Nothing complete, nothing polished, but each sound was a piece of himself being reclaimed. Music became his therapy, more effective than any counseling session. When words failed him, the piano spoke. When fear overwhelmed him, the keys grounded him. Slowly, the trauma began to lose its grip. The sound of the crash still haunted him, but now it was competing with something stronger. The sound of his own voice, his own music, his own healing, and that sound was winning. Note by note, song by song, Kodi was rebuilding himself from the inside out. His family noticed the changes. Kodi started eating again. He smiled occasionally. He'd hum melodies while walking around the house. The light in his eyes, dim for so long, began to flicker back to life. It wasn't a full recovery. He still had bad days. Days where the memories came rushing back and he'd shut down completely. But the good days outnumbered the bad now. And on the good days, Kodi played. He played with a depth and emotion he'd never accessed before. His music had always been beautiful, but now it was raw, honest. It carried the weight of everything he'd been through. Every note was soaked in pain and hope, and people who heard him play could feel the difference. This wasn't just talent, this was survival turned into art. Tina recorded some of his sessions at home, just for herself at first, but when she listened back, she was stunned. Kodi's music had evolved. It wasn't just technically perfect anymore. It was deeply, achingly human. She shared one recording with a close friend who insisted she post it online. Tina hesitated. She didn't want to exploit her son's pain, but she also knew the world needed to hear this. So she posted a short clip on social media with a simple caption, "Kodi's Healing Journey." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of comments poured in. People said the music moved them to tears, that it gave them hope in their own dark times, that Kodi's courage inspired them to keep going. And in reading those messages, Kodi began to understand something powerful. His pain had purpose, his story mattered, and maybe, just maybe, that was worth fighting for.